Australia. In 2002, the construction of the Paradise Dam was officially approved. By 2005, the dam was built. Its capacity was 792 million gallons, and it was built about 62 miles from the city of Bundaberg. The plan was for the dam to meet the needs of the nearby agricultural industry, and 240 million Australian dollars were invested in its construction. That's roughly 165 million US dollars. Nowadays, the namesake reservoir, created after the dam's construction, serves as the region's main water supply. Around 60,000 people live downstream of the river. The Paradise Dam itself is a gravity dam, meaning it holds back water primarily due to the weight of the material in the wall, which resists the pressure of the water. It wasn't exactly a unique project, and it was expected that this investment would pay off since local farms were supposed to get water. According to the plan, the dam was supposed to last over 100 years. But the reality turned out to be completely different. Now the dam is considered one of the biggest infrastructure failures in Australian history, and they'll have to completely rebuild it a few feet further downstream. But here comes the most intriguing question. Is this even possible? Hold on, I'm about to surprise you. But coffee first. I've come across some really fascinating content. But first, an unobtrusive reminder for those who forget to hit the like button, don't forget to do it. If you don't do that or don't feel like it, I'm not insisting. Thanks. So before looking into what exactly is wrong with the Paradise Dam, it'd be good to check out its history and the region's history as a whole. First of all, let's look at Burnett River. It drains a basin of 12,820 square miles, which makes up 1.9% of Queensland's total area. This area was historically inhabited by Indigenous Australians, and later the river became a source of wealth. In the late 1800s, it was a haven for prospectors who came to a town called Paradise to pan for gold and make their fortune. Gold was discovered here in 1889, and by November 1890, the town was declared a gold mine. In February 1890, there were 40 people here, and by May, the number had already reached 100. By 1891, the population of Paradise had grown to 621 people. It was a real town with streets, garden plots, a school, Chinese market gardens, a slaughterhouse, and a post office. There was even a courthouse, and the grog shops were called pubs. What followed was a fate common to many such towns. Less than a decade later, in 1898, Paradise was deserted as the gold dried up. The only trace of its past is a cemetery to the northeast, with graves that have endured to the present day. When they started building the dam in 2003, they decided to sacrifice Paradise and flood it with an artificial lake. Apparently, out of respect for the past, they named the dam after the old town. But who would have thought this would curse it? Not literally, but you'll see for yourself soon enough. Actually, building the dam was just necessary because Australia is a pretty dry country after all. Water here is a damn valuable resource, so they take it seriously, especially farmers who'd lose both crops and livestock without it. So pouring millions of dollars into it was justified, all to support the local agricultural as well as industrial and urban demand. Drought affects everyone. Due to Australia's location and weather conditions, dry spells occur pretty often. It's no coincidence that Australia is known as the driest inhabited continent on the planet. There's not only little rainfall here, but also a high evaporation rate. As a result, it gets 20 inches less precipitation than the world average. And for Australia, this is not a new problem. The country's gone through severe droughts before. Some of the worst include the Federation drought at the turn of the 19th century, which was so extreme that over 50 million sheep died. There was also the Millennium Drought, which cost the country about $10 billion. In short, water is really valued in Australia. The current irrigation system supplies water to farmland and towns in the areas of Burnett, Colin, and Isa Shire, as well as Bundaberg City. The water for the system comes from the Fred High and Paradise Dams. About 370 miles of canals and pipelines distribute water to around 1,000 households, and since the Paradise Dam was built, there's nothing to complain about. The water supply in this area is really good. If before folks dealt with quotas and a lack of water, now everything's just fantastic. So it turns out that the local economy's prosperity is directly tied to irrigated farming and consequently to the dam. And we're talking, just to be clear, about one of the most productive food areas in the whole of Australia. In short, you understand, the dam had to be built. But it quickly became obvious that this much-awaited structure felt kind of cursed. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Initially, it looked like it just suffered a lot from a string of floods. In December 2010, Paradise experienced its first major flood when the water level in the Burnett River hit 26 feet. And that was just the beginning. A whole series of floods hit Queensland, forcing thousands of people from towns and villages to evacuate. At least 90 towns were affected and over 200,000 people. Initially, the damage was estimated at $1 billion Australian dollars, but that amount was later raised to $2.38 billion. As of March 2012, it was believed that 33 people had died as a result of these floods, with another 3 missing. Communities along the Fitzroy and Burnett rivers were hit especially hard. And then in 2013, Tropical Cyclone Oswald hit. For several days, it wreaked havoc over parts of Queensland and New South Wales. The coastal areas of Queensland suffered the most, especially Bundaberg. 7,500 residents of Bundaberg and hospital patients were evacuated. Some homes were completely washed away, and parts of the sewage system were just destroyed. 6 people died, 1 went missing, and the damage was estimated at $2.5 billion Australian dollars. The Burnett River experienced a record flood, which later turned out to have caused significant damage to the Paradise Dam. Repairs cost over $20 million. The dam really was heavily damaged. Cracks and holes bigger than an Olympic swimming pool were found in it. It took a lot of effort, money, and heavy machinery to fix the situation. And even back then, folks suspected something was wrong because the dam was totally new. Why did the flooding hit it so hard? Checks began, and they promised to deliver the results to the government. And it quickly became obvious that the flooding wasn't the issue. The problem was with how the dam was originally designed. They just built it wrong. In 2019, the Queensland government announced it would lower the dam's height by 16 feet due to serious structural issues with the design. The dam's total height is 121 feet, so taking off a whole 16 feet is quite a lot. But if this isn't done, there's a real risk of collapse. So in 2020, the height of the dam was lowered by 19 feet. Honestly, I wasn't able to find out the details. The decision to reduce the dam's capacity was made based on core samples taken during the inspection of the structure. But the reports weren't published because it's a trade secret. It's only known that the company released 27.7 billion gallons of water to cut the dam's capacity down to 42% of what it currently is. This water release was equivalent to emptying 32,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools, and it certainly has consequences. Since 2020, the region has been dealing with a roughly 20% reduction in water resources. The water release happened during a drought when the lack of water is a literal threat to everything, to all vital water infrastructure. Of course, people didn't like this. The government also got criticized for not even thinking to consult with the cattlemen and farmers along the Burnett River who've been struggling with drought. And the less power the dam has, the worse the situation gets. People need water and everything else that people grow. So it's either safety or enough water to survive. The problem is that growing anything in this area requires investment, just like everywhere else. Investments provide confidence and the ability to farm, growing timber crops, avocados, macadamia nuts, all sorts of fruits. But when there's a lack of water, trust in farmers weakens and investments dry up. This is bad for literally everyone. And this leads to decisive actions. In 2020, local farmers even went on strike, demanding that the dam be repaired instead of just lowering the water level. Farmers also insisted on being told exactly what's wrong with the dam. Let me remind you, they don't do this because of trade secrets. It even got to court. Farmers were trying to do everything possible to prevent the state government from simply reducing the water supply instead of properly repairing the dam, but it didn't amount to anything. By the way, if you're curious about what happened to all that Olympic pool water they had to dump, part of it went to farmers. For 10 weeks after the dump, pastures could use this water for free, but it seems like most of the water just got dumped into the sea. Just imagine, everything around is suffering from drought while 105 million gallons of fresh water get poured into the sea every day. No wonder this decision sparked a ton of criticism. But the thing is, the water had to be drained quickly. Even in a drought, farmers just can't use that much water in such a short time. The sea was the only option. So what's the reason for the poor condition of the dam? We managed to figure out a few things. For instance, the team of international experts subjected concrete samples to a series of tests, including artificial aging and tests for compression and stiffness. They found that the concrete was degrading much faster than expected. The Paradise Dam has become the first dam in the country to use roller compacted concrete. This is a cheaper way to build a dam, and it's done safely around the world, but it requires less cement. It turns out that the concrete in the Paradise Dam actually loses strength over time, even though it's supposed to gain strength. Most of the problems are related to the bonding between the layers of compacted concrete inside the dam, the foundations under the secondary spillway, and the risk of erosion. But that's not all. The concrete itself turned out to be of poor quality. Due to the poor concrete mix used in the original dam, where a lot of clay was mixed with a small amount of cement, the wall became prone to swelling and shrinking due to moisture. Porous concrete also caused the cement to wash out, which weakened the whole structure. But do you know what's the weirdest part? That cursed dam was at risk of bursting in a situation that happens once every 200 years, and of course, that situation happened during the flood of 2013. So by 2019, it became clear that the dam was at risk of collapsing because of all these engineering mistakes. It turned out that the dam didn't meet modern standards and would lose its strength over time, and this over time could definitely happen pretty soon. No one has publicly claimed that the dam is at risk of bursting, but the Prime Minister of Queensland said that the lowering of the dam's height is fundamentally a safety issue and that it's a paramount safety issue. It's as if everything is hinting that Paradise is 5 minutes away from disaster, and if a burst happens during another heavy rain, some areas downstream will be flooded, including parts of the city of Bundaberg. Naturally, the people downstream immediately got worried upon hearing that the dam was at risk of bursting. Who wouldn't be worried? It's a massive wall of water that could flood their homes at any moment and just wipe them out. Some areas were cut off from the world during previous floods, and now people are seriously afraid they won't be able to escape if the dam breaks. Besides, there's evidence that if the 2013 flood had lasted longer, erosion from insufficient downstream protection could have undermined the dam, leading to its toppling. You don't even have to look far for examples of dam failures. Sometimes they happen even a few times a year. The last dam collapse happened on August 24, 2024 in Sudan, resulting in at least 148 deaths and around 200 people missing. Sudanese officials reported that the Arbat Dam started to fail due to prolonged heavy rains that fell earlier than seasonal rains in previous years. Also, the rains led to silt buildup on the dam. And in the evening of August 24th, the Arbat Dam collapsed due to damage. The reservoir emptied and areas downstream quickly began to flood. The United Nations reported that about 50,000 civilian homes were severely damaged or destroyed. 70 villages were affected by sudden flooding, and 20 of those villages were wiped out. Livestock perished, large areas of farmland were ruined, and the Ministry of Health stated that it expects an increase in health issues due to water contamination and outbreaks of diseases like cholera. And overall, the consequences of dam breaches or collapses look pretty much the same. Since 2017, we've counted at least 16 similar events, and every time it's a major local disaster. If the Paradise Dam fails, Australia won't be an exception. But don't think that the authorities have given up on the dam. After 2 years of waiting, in February 2021, the farmers got a Christmas gift, or rather a promise of a gift. In short, the state government promised to repair the dam and restore it to its former glory by 2028. It's just that everything went off the rails again after that. The new project was expected to bring the dam back to full capacity by lifting, strengthening, and stabilizing the current wall again. The government allocated $1.2 billion to restore the dam to its original size. Then experts came in and messed everything up. They declared that the Paradise Dam could neither be repaired nor strengthened, and this was just 20 years after it was built. Such a ridiculously short time for something like a dam, since they're usually designed to last for centuries. A local MP even called the Paradise Dam one of the biggest infrastructure fails in Queensland and a disgrace. Is she wrong? The problems with the dam turned out to be so serious that it became clear there was no point in trying to fix anything. Huge amounts of money would just be wasted. The poor quality of the concrete used for the construction makes repairs impossible. That's it. There can't be any other opinion here. It's true that since the dam height was reduced and there's less water in the reservoir behind it, there's now a risk of it bursting in an event that happens once every 5,000 years, but that's still not safe enough. Let me remind you that the last failure had a likelihood of once every 200 years. With that in mind, something that happens once every 5,000 years could very well happen, the day after tomorrow? On January 11th, 2024, the Queensland government announced that the Paradise Dam would need to be totally rebuilt 230 feet downstream. It's quite a reasonable decision since the dam's still necessary for people, and since it can't be repaired, it needs to be constructed from scratch. However, this decision is also criticized because it means that billions of dollars will be spent again. Also, building a new dam will be way more expensive than fixing the current one, and it'll take around 7 to 10 years. For all this time, people will have to deal with the shortage of water. No one's provided specific deadlines yet, and there's no estimate for the new project, even though the development has already begun. Besides, new ecological solutions will need to be identified since 2 dams on one river is a situation that promises many challenges for nature. But they say that the new dam will be exactly the same height and capacity as the old one. That should calm the people down. Most likely, the existing dam will stay in place and be used as a cofferdam to create a dry and safe working environment during construction. This means it'll hold back the river while the work is going on, then the dam will be restored to its original state, only this time, as we assume, with a lot more concrete. After that, during construction, parts of the original structure will be demolished so that it doesn't affect the operation of the new dam. Ultimately, the original dam will be submerged. Some parts of the old structure may stick out of the flooded area, but that's not too important, especially considering that the lifespan of the new dam should be around 100 years. I really hope that the second Paradise Dam will be built stronger and better, shedding its curse and withstanding many challenges. Similar situation. There's another dam that can't be repaired or torn down, but doing nothing could lead to consequences. Spittler is one of the first large dams in the world built in the mountains. Construction started way back in 1925, and thanks to the efforts of 600 workers, the structure reached a height of 374 feet. The construction of this structure created a new artificial lake fed by the melting glaciers, which was later used for hydroelectric power generation. Its capacity is around 3.3 billion cubic feet. This makes the lake the largest reservoir owned by the energy company KWO. Sounds impressive, right? However, about 30 years after the dam was built, a rather surprising discovery was made. Experts found a serious defect on the side of the dam that faces the lake. And it wasn't just a crack. We're talking about what's called a vertical separation, meaning a large chunk of material was separating from the main mass of the concrete structure. There was also a smaller horizontal crack near the top of the dam. Concerns arose that in a few decades, this crack could lead to part of the structure collapsing. The possible outcome is a wave in the lake threatening the valley. It seems like why not fix the crack or replace the damaged section? Spoiler alert, they tried. It just didn't work. Now there's only one option left: to build a new dam in front of the old one and flood the space between them. Spittler will be preserved as a historical site, while the new dam will take on the role of holding back the water masses. A new project worth $140 million isn't considered a big deal by today's standards. However, building a dam can be called a feat, just like the construction of Spittler, because it's still a massive structure. By the way, work started back in 2019 and is expected to finish by 2025. I hope the Swiss will pull it off. Failed fish tunnel. Check out these shots. No, this isn't some weird game. It's a real fish tunnel. Something like this could work at the Paradise Dam, but something went wrong again. They approved the construction of this dam as long as fish could get up and down. That meant they had to build something to help with that. Fish can't just jump up dozens of feet up. And although there were discussions in 2009 about how fish tunnels wouldn't really help, that didn't stop anyone, and they went ahead and built a tunnel that cost $30 million. What might have gone wrong? The dam is up, there's a fish tunnel in place, especially considering it's a rare superorder of lungfish whose lives shouldn't be disrupted by some concrete barrier. But when researchers did a study, they discovered that only one fish made it upstream, And if the other fish couldn't cross the dam, it means they lost the ability to reproduce normally. Just to remind you, we're talking about rare fish. In general, they tried their best, but nothing worked out, and the Paradise Dam turned out to be a key threat to the recovery of the lungfish population. As if there weren't enough problems with it already. Another threat. In August 2024, the Paradise Dam exceeded its capacity and the water could flood everything around at any moment. Seriously, for just one dam, there seem to be way too many threats. Okay, actually, there's not going to be any flooding. After a lot of rain over 2 days, the dam in the North Burnett area began to overflow. The company Sunwater, which takes care of the water resources, said that water is spilling out of the reservoir into the surrounding streams. The latest figures indicate that the reservoir is at 114.18% capacity, meaning it's 6.5 million gallons over the maximum allowed level of 45 billion gallons. Because of the water overflowing the dam, there's a threat to the Burnett River again. However, the Water Resources Corporation claims that the excess water won't cause the river to overflow its banks and won't affect nearby waterways. Well, let's see what happens with the river and the dam. But the most important thing is people's safety, right? To keep residents of the areas near the Paradise Dam and the Burnett River safe, a recommendation has been issued to monitor the water level in the dam. It's also advised to follow a simple rule. If flooding does occur, don't enter the water of the overflowing river. Since you've made it this far, hit that like button. See you later.